Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
So again, I want to thank you for being here. So now let me introduce you to our amazing presenters. We have Jeff Fissel, who is the Vice President of Technology, and Brett Elam is the Director of Technology, both here at GP Strategies. And we're really excited again for today's presentation. So with that, Jeff and Brett, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfectly.
Yes, we're off to a good start. The technology's working. Thank you for everyone joining. We have proof that this is the year of the AI agents. Everyone's here. This was an exciting topic. There's a lot of people that signed up, and we're super excited to walk you through kind of our presentation today, but to continue this discussion with everyone. So please, as Kim mentioned, please keep this interactive. If you have questions, drop them in the chat in real time. We'll be monitoring it. We can go different directions. We can have a lot of fun today, but this is going to be a whirlwind of 45 minutes. So I guess we should introduce ourselves quickly, Brett, but I'll quickly do it and I'll hand to you. I am Jeff Fissel. The title is VP of Technology, but really I kind of consider myself a failed programmer. I spent many years trying to do that and realized there were way smarter people in the world out there to do that than me. And now I've kind of been focusing on helping organizations figure out how to get to those productivity gains, the production gains with applying and using technology. And I think AI, we're in one of those really fun hype cycles right now. So look forward to talking about that. And I'm privileged to be joined by my colleague, Brett. And Brett, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. It's great to see so many people on this webinar too. So I'm Brett Elam. Actually work for Jeff as the Director of Technology as well. Really, truly, my passion over the past 3 or 4 years has been around AI, data analytics, integrating and helping customers, enterprises, organizations develop better ways to engage with AI and kind of, associate and align them at the human initiatives level.
Yeah. So Brett and I have a tendency to get kind of technical sometimes. So if we say something that you don't know or are intrigued about, please feel free to ask a question. But Kim, let's go ahead and start. We have a series of 3 polls we want to kind of gauge the audience appetite with. So let's put the first one up here. How would you describe your experience with using AI in L&D? So let's give people a little bit to answer this. It's my co-pilot. I've dabbled. I know what it is, but I haven't used it. Wait, AI could be used in L&D? Let's give people a couple seconds here. We're getting good participation. This is kind of fun. All right, that's that's slowing down now, but so can we go ahead and share those results just so other people can see it? I think this is good. We've done lots of these webinars over the last couple of years, and it's moving up here, Brett. Like we see more and more people that AI is my co-pilot. 32% of you are out there doing that. Dabbled but learning. Still got a couple people that jokingly can AI be used in L&D? I assume you probably know that as we're here, but this is good. We're getting through that maturity curve that's there. So let's hit the next poll to kind of advance our conversation here.
Give me a second. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I haven't.
So poll number 2. Here we go. All right. So let's talk about the adoption of this here. So if your company said, hey, you have an AI assistant or bot you can use tomorrow, an agent, let's say, how would you react? Let's go ASAP, cautiously optimistic, curious, or my favorite, nope, I don't trust those robots. All right, we're getting a good kind of spread here. We're almost there. All right, so let's go ahead and share these results as the rest of it comes in. The good news here is, I think because you're here, this is validating, Brett, that we're on the right track. Of most people are ready to go, and optimistic, I'll say. So I think that's that's a good sign. A year and a half ago, I think it would have been much more down on the bottom of a little bit of a lack of trust. There's much more trust being built, would you say, kind of
Yeah,
in our world now?
two things. I love the YOLO approach to AI. What could go wrong there?
Yeah.
Yeah, 55% of everyone saying, let's roll it out ASAP. But I think this is the first time I've seen someone, like not a single person say, nope, I don't trust robots. Now, this might be a very biased group since they all signed up for this webinar, but I just think that's really interesting.
Awesome. And last one here, let's get real specific on agents specifically. So have you knowingly, let's say, used AI agents to support some of your L&D activities? So I use them regularly. I've experimented. I've heard about it, tell me more about what this thing called agents are. All right. We got a good chunk here. We'll give it a second more. We're getting a good, we have a good participating crowd. So thank you all for answering these poll questions really quickly. Let's go ahead and kind of share these results. And this actually isn't surprising to me. So please don't feel discouraged by this, but I think this is a little more in the middle of it because we've been talking about AI and how do you apply it. And agents we're going to spend a lot of time talking about it, are a great way for people to apply and get those kind of productivity gains, but they're still relatively new. And it's a gray area of what do we mean when we're talking about that and those sort of things. So this was fun. Brett, anything pop to you on this poll
Yeah,
as we show the results?
I think there's another surprising one, and seeing the relatively high percentage of people using AI regularly for content creation, and be curious as we go along to see how people are using that. Feel free to share any thoughts in the chat too. But the content creation versus the preparation around the content being leveraged by AI is a good distinction there as well. So interested.
Yeah. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? We kind of teased this a little bit in what we talked about. But we're going to first, before we get into the details on agents, we're going to talk about the data, because data truly is the fuel that's going to make these agents be able to do meaningful work for you as you start to do it. And we're going to start to redefine data in a lot of ways. Sometimes we think about data as analytics and numbers and spreadsheets, but data in AI's fuel is words, is natural language. It's the IP and knowledge that exists. So we're going to talk about how do we get that into the right format and why that's so important to get that step right before you let the agents start to do things with that data. And there's some lessons learned we can share there for sure. We're going to talk about agents in general and kind of a little bit of a base level, but thinking about it. And then anyone that's ever been on a webinar with me and or Brett probably knows that we love a good live demo and to roll the dice and see if things will work live as we do it. So we're going to pull some things up on the call as well and get into it. So we got a lot to cover real quick here, Brett, but let's get into the first one. So I feel like probably most people on this call are hearing hey, like I think I even saw it in the chat, like, hey, I've been told by leadership I need to do more with less. I need to find a way to drive that efficiency, and I need to use AI, which is great. Like we're at I'll say the peak of inflated expectations for AI. It can do everything. It's magical. It's spectacular. But how do we actually kind of get to that? And some of the challenges that we've seen as it kind of plays in here are once you start doing it, people feel that it provides a very mediocre output. If I've asked AI to write me a video script and then it writes me words, but then I read those words and it's like, that's sort of boring. That's not an engaging video script. How do I do something more with it? And part of that comes from the lack of instructional design expertise that's built into this. Now, the good news is, spoiler alert, like you can overcome this challenge for sure. We'll talk about how agents can kind of help us do that. And the other big thing we've seen, and Brett, I know you have some insight on this last one here, is I think there's been this misconception of point AI at big pile of data, big data lake, and let it go figure things out. And it turns out that it's not that good at doing that. There are definitely some issues with how that works. And Brett, I know you've dabbled in seen a lot of people attempt this. So I don't know if you wanted to add more on that bullet.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I've seen is people get excited. They're like, oh, great, we can throw a whole repository of, every, PDF we've got, every SharePoint site, everything. And all of a sudden I'm going to have this, expert AI agent engine thing that anyone can chat and talk to. And I think what we've realized is, and what kind of anyone that's used tools like that before is you end up with, and we'll talk more about this in depth later, but like you end up with an AI output that starts to get really confused with all the different data points and information and insights that it thinks it's trying to make into one big cohesive output, when in reality, it's pulling incorrect data from over here, it's pulling old data from over here. This is correct, but when trying to merge it all together, all of a sudden it becomes a little bit, hallucinogenic, we'll say. Garbage in, garbage out.
I see the
Allison,
garbage
exactly.
in, garbage out. So that kind of plays into this, like, okay, let's think about us in this room here, understanding the data that we have that goes into this sort of AI tool. So we'll walk through this. The first is understanding the data that you have. This is the garbage in, garbage out thing. Exactly. Like, not all data is high quality or correct. A common thing we've seen people is, let's dump all the courses I have into an AI model and have it start to do new things. It turns out that you could have courses that have contradicting information in them, an old way of doing something versus a new way of doing something. And AI is not going to know the difference. It doesn't know what's right.
Yeah, and who out there would feel confident sharing, every single like course they have in their LMS catalog with an AI and assuming that all of that content is accurate and up to date? This is an actual poll. In fact, I feel like I already might know that answer, but I think that's the big issue, is that when you give the information data to AI, what ends up happening is there's no grounding in truth, what's accurate, what's up to date, where there's contradicting information, how it can resolve that data. So I think that's the big thing that people they're probably aware of, but it's a harder problem to solve.
Yep, absolutely. The grounding in truth, I think, is the key thing. Consider the context of the content. This is a fun one too. Like, AI's gotten pretty good at doing videos, Word docs, PDFs, things like that, but it doesn't necessarily understand the structure of learning content. Like, I don't know if anyone's tried to upload a SCORM file or an e-learning file to a tool, but it doesn't usually know what to do with it because it's compiled. It's got a lot of JavaScript and extra stuff in there that can really mung up what the model decides to do with it. So understanding kind of the context of what you're loading into the tool becomes really important.
And that's essentially the problem of that takes place before you ever talk to AI, right? That's the, parsing it, deconstructing it, reconstructing it to something that AI can read a lot easier. I think that can be the intimidating part for a lot of organizations.
You're kind of rebuilding the content in a way, and like an AI friendly way is a thing to do that. Managing the formats, the form matters. This is a fun one to me, like tables inside of learning content, like large amounts of tabular data. AI is not very good at reading that. It's not good at figuring that out. Complex imagery. You can use the vision or multimodal models to start to understand those things, but being aware of the format these are in matters to what the AI can do with that data.
I think that's why you're starting to see this big shift in trends for a model that has reasoning capabilities, right? That isn't just going to take one quote unquote pass through all that content, right? It almost needs to pass through it one time and then, looking for all the text, maybe another time looking for, if it's a PDF file, looking for all the images and defining what each of those are. So there's really a process that should be taking place within the large language model. And the issue with that is the reasoning ones are really expensive to implement and use. And so I think there's a lot that can be done to use the more affordable, I'll say affordable models for everyone, but also be able to get the same or better output.
Yep. Brett, you want to talk about bias? I know you have some talking points of how you think about beyond just the traditional bias we think about in content.
Yeah, less on the human bias part and more on the two. There's many types of bias as it relates to large language models and AI, but the two we're talking about here are the data sources bias and as well as like the intent and alignment of the large language model or the AI you're using, right? So that's the one I want to just talk real briefly about. When it comes to intent and the alignment, this is where the outputs of a large language model vary wildly, right? I give Jeff a hard time all the time about when he's demoing, he will, try and show something with an AI tool, ChatGPT or Copilot or something like that. And he'll say, hey, create, 10 assessment questions about this topic. Bias is sometimes something you want to, it's going to exist. You want to lean into it and give it the opportunity to have a bias towards subject matter expertise, give it the background, give it the use case, give it the output that you want to see. You want to bias it and get it in that mode of thinking before it tries to answer. And that's really the whole logic and reasoning behind those reasoning large language models as well.
Exactly.
But yeah, I can talk literally for the next 45 minutes about biases, but and that's for another webinar.
For the next session, we can do a follow-on that for sure. This one's a fun one, especially when you get into the learning world of like, not all wrong data is wrong. If you load in content that has assessment questions in, for example, there's intentional bad data there. And AI doesn't know that that's bad data. You can tell it is, and you can get ahead of it. But again, back to this understanding what you're putting in to these agents and these tools that we're building. If you're loading in assessment questions, be aware of that. That we've seen people get tripped up where when it summarizes stuff, it uses the wrong distractors as part of the summaries, which can really throw some people off there. And then another one that is starting to be solved as we think about with the reasoning models a little bit here, but is the data combinations. And the equation is sort of simple. There can be two true statements that are taken and merged together that don't necessarily always equal another new true statement. So being aware of what's being used when you ask something to summarize, when you ask something to do a task, this becomes really important for these agents that are really purpose-built, of understanding why it did a certain thing. A lot of cases is because of those data sources, and that's going to help you kind of think through that. So I don't know, Brett, if you want to add any more on my true statement equation, but
no, that's great. I think it's
self-explanatory.
It's self-explanatory, but I think just to drive that point home, I think that's the problem where you have a lot of just a lot of content as your input data, and sometimes that content is contradictory to each other, which can create an incorrect final output, even though individually they're all correct.
Yep. A thing to be aware of. All right, so we've talked about our data. We're feeling pretty good. We got all these things. We're considering all these implications of what we have here, and now we want to start feeding this into agents. So let's kind of talk about what is an L&D agent, or what's an agent in general. There's lots of different definitions as you get out there, but a common one that we see out there is that it's an AI that is given a goal and can pursue that goal autonomously. It's given a purpose. It's designed to go do things. So in this diagram here that we'll walk you through in a little more detail in a second, when we share kind of a scenario, the green bits in the middle are the agent, the logic that is in the agent, and the series of things that can kind of happen there. So a common one that Brett, you and I have been dealing with pretty recently, actually, is, hey, people want to take a video transcript from an hour-long, let's say, session, a webinar like this. And, hey, I want to create an assessment based off of that. There's actually a series of steps you need to do that. A single prompt isn't going to do that well. You can try it, but I'll promise you it's not it's going to take some steps to process that data, clean it, get it in the right shape, understand what you need to do, and then create that. So these steps, if I think about, hey, I want to take this video and my prompt in is to create this new assessment, I need to maybe process that transcript, remove the excess unnecessary data, get it into a right structure. I need to detect and or generate the learning objectives that are covered in there so I can understand when I'm writing an assessment, what are the objectives or outcomes that I'm trying to measure against, not just random bits that it guesses it wants to assess. And these are kind of the logic steps that you're forcing it to work through. And then I want to generate the actual assessment questions based on those learning objectives or outcomes. And I want it to follow a very specific set of rules in doing that. So I don't know, Brett, if you kind of want to
Yeah.
add even a little more detail here on like how this could work.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing I'll say on the agent aspect is each one of those green boxes, that's not a magic box. It's not meant to be a black box. It's just a shorter way to write fancy prompt where the prompt is acting like an orchestrator, a fancy prompt where a new prompt is telling it to go do a specific thing, 1, 2, and 3, synthesizing, fancy prompt. These are just prompts at the end of the day that are being handed off from one to another. And when we talk about this
And there's
agent,
probably loops in there too,
and
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
right? So when we talk about these agents, by the way, if any of you guys haven't seen or read the blog article on the Anthropic page, it's sourced down there at the bottom. It's where we got this little screenshot for it. It's phenomenal. It's a great article to help conceptualize and understand all the different, and there's many more, but all the different workflows that agent. So when people talk about agents, how to think about it, whether it's, an orchestrator model, an evaluation and optimization model, there's 100 of these things. But yeah, so but related to this kind of workflow, just to kind of put this into more concrete terms, the input might be a video transcript with the user defining what goals it wants at the end of it, right? Orchestrator is going to understand it's a predefined prompt. It's going to create those objectives with the output. It's a good quality video assessment for the viewer. So it knows what the goal is now. Now it knows how to distribute those tasks, those subtasks, right? Maybe it's breaking down and identifying the learning objectives, because obviously you want to know those before you create assessments, right? Then it's, evaluating the topics that are in there. And maybe, there's a role in, if the outputs aren't perfectly right, maybe one of those LLM calls is a reevaluation of problematic issues that get, brought up by the synthesizer one as an example. So there's a lot that goes on here, but that synthesizer basically just combines all that data into the desired output, and then you get the output.
Yep, absolutely. And so let's get a little more meta here as we think about it. And I promise we're getting into some live demos right after this slide. But agents can evaluate themselves. Like good agent design have evaluation workflows in how you think about them and what are those evaluation steps. And they can also call and talk to other agents. So there might be a series of agents as you start to think about these purpose-built items that are here. And that is kind of how you can kind of, this is like that one green box is that whole thing we talked about before. And again, you can watch this thing kind of iterate on itself from the ins and the outs that are here. So Brett, anything you want to add about kind of the agent, how these things start to kind of communicate with each other before we get in and kind of show it a little bit?
No, let's get in and show stuff.
All right, let me do that. Let me go. So we're going to walk you through a tool that we've built in GP that uses a series of agents called AIQ that plays into a synthetic video generation tool called Colossian. And then we're also going to get into Copilot Studio and some of the things that are there. We only got 15 minutes here, so we're going to go rapid fire. We can go into a lot more detail, but this is the fun bit. So with that, let me stop sharing this, and I'm going to pull up my screen. Oh, I have to click it works better if I click the share button. I've learned. All right, Brett, can you see my See my screen there?
Yes. And Allison and Jamie, see your questions. I'm going to respond in the chat.
Perfect. So this is our AIQ tool. This is all built inside of the Microsoft Azure tech stack. So it's using the Azure OpenAI models, the security permissions, all of those kind of things that happen. So I'm going to point out the agents that at workflow. There's lots of them that are kind of happening in the background, but the core of the tool, you upload content to it. PowerPoints, PDFs, all the things that are here. I'll open a SCORM file here that happens. And the first agent that we actually have is a summarizing, like an understanding agent. And it is going through, taking that raw text, categorizing it, organizing it, chunking it, and summarizing. I think there's actually four or five agents there that are doing specific purposes to kind of understand what's going on in that. There's then a skill tagging agent that's taking an existing skill taxonomy and tagging that content to that taxonomy and providing very specific purposes like confidence scores and reasoning to it. These are asks that were in the agent of not just tag it, but tell me why you tagged it and how confident you are in tagging it. And that's that a part of the iteration loop is what shows up here. And we found that really dramatically improves the quality. Once we have files in the product, we can start to create knowledge bases of trusted content to work off of. And I'll go into one based on accountability here. And basically the way the agent works here is I can point it at, let's say, a dozen files, and I can say, hey, detect all the topics, the common topics across all of these files. Tell me what those are. And then once I've agreed to that, I want you to basically break down all of that into its core elements. So we have like a deconstructor agent in essence, or a series of deconstructor agents that are deconstructing that content into the core components that are here. And I have the ability to come edit, manipulate, and control, update any of those sort of things. So these are almost kind of our input agents into AIQ of how do we understand what's going on and build these knowledge bases of content. Then we also have a concept of how do I start to create output agents? How do I start to do things? So let's stick with our authentic leadership content. And we have a concept called workspaces where I can say, hey, everything I create in here is only tied to this knowledge base or these specific files that I want to work off of. And then I can start to create these output agents that have this expertise kind of built in. So let's say I want to create a video script for an intro video based off of this content. I'll do that. And this is where the first step in this output agent is actually going to come back and ask me some solid instructional design questions. Like, hey, before I go start writing a video script, like, tell me some information here on what should be in this video script that I'm creating. And I'm going to give it some answers here. And it's then hopefully going to accept my answers. If it doesn't, it's going to ask me more questions because you can build those reasoning steps in there. And then it's going to go off and start using the power of generative AI and an agent, a series of steps of how to write a good video script. The first thing it's going to write is the title and description. It's going to call out the parameters that are there. And then it's going to use that data and the subsequent data behind it to actually write the script, the words that need to be said. And you'll notice in here, it gives you the visual cues as well. That was part of the instructions built into the agents of how to write a good video script and what's needed to create a good video script kind of in these moments. So you get to kind of see this idea. Now then you take this kind of a step farther. And of course, in here, you can ask it to write content for slides. You can ask it to write assessment questions, course outlines, all the different stuff that you would expect that a learning designer kind of needs. We've built those kind of learning design agents into it. But one of the things I wanted to show is, okay, what do I do with that video script now? And that's where you can start to feed this into other AI tools that have other purpose-built agents. So I'm going to switch to this one here where I have a video script on a TypeScript course. And you'll see here's an individual presenter broken into 4 logical parts talking about TypeScript. And I have the ability here, I have a connection built to Colossian. So in this case, it's going to take this output, this validated output here, and it's going to send it over to that tool using its API. And they have a series of agents that are going to take it and then process that into a video. So live demos are fun here. Let's hope this actually works. And what it will do is there we go. It's completed that. It's going to send me a link to say, hey, go see the video you just created in Colossian. Again, Colossian's a synthetic video generation tool, a partner of ours here at GP. So what it will pop up here is that video. And as I mentioned, Colossian has a series of agents or workflows that know how to then take that synthetic video and do other work with it. So we'll give this a second to kind of pop up what we see, and we will walk through that. The joy of live things. It always takes a little longer, I feel like, when you're doing it live on a demo in front of hundreds of people. But that's I feel there we go. Elevating my TypeScript skills. And you'll notice that that script gets brought over here, and inside of here we'll have a synthetic human that will come kind of walk me through what that is. And I see, like, this is the person that's going to read that script to me, and I can see all the elements that are there. But you'll call out here that you notice, like, it didn't do it perfectly. Like, hey, like the text is misspaced here. We have to do these sort of things. So this is a thing where, like, again, there's very much a human plus kind of equation here, where this got me, let's say, 70% of the way there. And then let's say, oh, I want to take this and I want to make it an interactive branching scenario kind of thing. I can start to do those kind of moments. Or, oh, I'm happy with this, and now I want to add different language variants to get this video out in multiple different languages. Again, this is an accelerating factor, not a replacing factor. So we do want to kind of think about that as we kind of go through all of these tools, of how these accelerate and how these change the places of where we put the people, the instructional designers, our team members, because they are still needed very much through this process. It's just the work that they're doing is changing and evolving as we provide these new tools that are out there. So, Brett, anything you want to call out here in Colossian or AIQ, or do you want me to toss it? I was going to toss it over to you to do some on the Copilot stuff and some of the other agents that we're seeing out there. Any questions in the chat that came up on this?
That's what I spent my time doing, is just answering questions in the chat. Some good ones. But no, nothing to add on this front. No.
All right. Again, we could spend hours going into all of these tools and all of the things you could do across them, but let me go ahead and stop sharing here, Brett, and pass the ball over to you to walk through some Copilot Studio agents and kind of how those are working, and maybe some of the other tools you're using on a daily basis to create these tools.
Yeah. All right.
Good dialogue, everyone. And now I can see the chat. I didn't have it up in a second. Looks like there's a good discussion. So please keep the questions coming.
And minute mark too. Okay, perfect.
We got this, Brett.
Bring it over. We got this. This will be a rapid fire one. As usual, Jeff nor I are actually very quick at in speaking our points. So let's see here. Can you guys see this okay?
Yes.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few different tools. And I think combined, my goal is to try and do it in like 6 minutes. So this will be really quick. But really the idea is to kind of get everyone's minds running a little bit about all the ways that they can leverage AI agents, where you can do it, where you can see examples of it and things like that. Copilot Studio is one of those tools, obviously, that is, I would say, Microsoft rapidly iterating on lots of ideas, and whether it's, chatbots or agentic workflows where, you have one agent that does something that goes to another agent, so you can kind of see how that's all working. But this is just kind of an example of, and if any of you guys have built any of these before, it is stupid simple for someone to go in and create this. So this is what I did. Took me a handful. It took me longer to write the instructions for what I wanted an AI agent, my course recommendation engine, to do, than to actually do all the technical work to create this thing. But so in this example, let's say, basically its role is to, give me courses recommended based on the conversation I'm having. So here's a test agent. So I'm going to say, hey, wanted to look at new skills for my professional growth. Do you have any ideas on what I could take? And for this demo, I'm just going to be a sales engineer, solution engineer. But so I told it that, but it doesn't have context about who I am yet. It could, I could have fed that to it with like the background data. But it says, yeah, happy to help, give me some more information here. And then, go in here and I'm going to say, currently I'm an SE, 4 years experience in the SaaS space, but maybe I want to be a solutions architect and get better at data analytics. And so what it's doing is actually pulling from a repository of our course catalog to find and create recommendations for it. All right. And I wish I could just kind of blow this out a little bit for the test agent, but essentially this is what it comes out with, becoming a solutions architect. It turns out we do have a course like that, cloud solutions architecture, data analytics techniques. So it gives me some nice insight into maybe where I can start looking. And I could have linked those courses as well. So that's an example, really simple and easy. The thing that I would recommend if anyone does want to, go wild and create a chatbot or whatever, an agent inside Copilot Studio, spend time doing the instructions. That's the piece that I think a lot of people want it to be magical and just say like, just know what I want. If you do it really well, then you'll end up with really good results. Can even add funny rules in here. Like, if someone asks for an inappropriate topic, you can respond with whatever you want it to respond with. So that's one example. Another example that's outside of Microsoft, and again, this is kind of towards Allison's question earlier, using AI, outside some of the context of what we're seeing in the business itself. So maybe you want to go in and you want to start doing research around a particular course or topic or whatever it is. This group of people have created some really cool concepts for research and learning, kind of like just-in-time learning. So as an example, if I wanted to learn about, I'm going to be a financial person now. Yep, I know. 401k company compliance regulations. So I want to like learn about that. Very colloquial, wait a second.
And this is a series of this is an agentic tool that is doing a series of steps. Yeah, there it comes.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, and so what's happening here is if you were to look at like what traffic is going on in the background, it's basically saying, take this. Okay, now come up with a list of topics. Now come up with a TLDR short answer version, quick answer about 401k compliance. Then once you got those topics, let's break those down further and further. Then let's do it looks like a Google image search for content that's out here. You can even go in and expand on each one of these topics. You can click on this and it'll kind of blow out a kind of a structure, a chart, a mapping, an outline for, compliance around this stuff, amendments, things like that. So really, really interesting and a great place to start. Really helpful, honestly, for like my kids wanting to learn stuff. But this is a great AI agentic example of a bunch of things going on at the same time in order to create one holistic, easy to like look at output. Okay, last one. If any of you guys have heard of this little school, in California called Stanford, they've done a really cool. They've created a little site called Storm, which is essentially a kind of a research tool where it goes out in a multi-step, multi-agent process. Will go out and do research. So I can go in and say, create, HIPAA considerations for, my colleagues in the mental health industry. And it'll go in and do that. It's going to ask me, what do you want to use it for? And I'm not going to actually wait for this whole thing to happen. But I do want to like just kick it off. And then I'm going to go over here because this is essentially what that outcome ultimately looked like at the end of it. So if I scroll down here, so here's key provisions. Maybe I wanted to train my staff and I wanted to go out and do research. So it's done a really good job of going out to the internet, like, Google searching or Bing searching, I guess is what it was,
Yeah.
and starting compiling and all this stuff. And again, this is a multi-step. Here's the brainstorming process. You can kind of see what's going on and how these agents have their own special role. There's a fact finder agent. Now there's an agent that's looking at common challenges here, health policy expert, legal scholar, and they all have their different roles ultimately to create these outputs. Anyway,
And then Brett,
yeah.
in a world like we're here at GP, like we would take this, assuming we're happy with this information,
Yeah.
and load it into AIQ to start creating courses or content or videos or things
Right.
like that based off of it. So,
and I think you have to start somewhere with a lot of
Yeah.
this stuff. And this is a great starting spot if research is part of that goal.
yeah. So let me bring us back here, Brett. We're right at the kind of top of time. Thank you for those examples. That was all. Like I love seeing the tools and things people use kind of on a daily basis to do things, because I think it's interesting. So hopefully other people found those as much more interesting. Let us know, because always happy to go deeper and do more of these webinars on specific tools and tech that are out there. We obviously are just scratching the edge of what's there. We wanted to leave you all with some. Thank you, Brett, for putting the links in there for people to explore on their own. Some thought-provoking questions in our world as we kind of think about this. And I'll throw these out there, and I'm curious if people in the chat have answers to these. Throw them in, but I'll ask Brett a couple of them too. So the first one here: what data do agents need to be good at their jobs? Like, what are you thinking about here? We talked a lot about that up front, Brett. Do you have a kind of, are there specifics that we need to be concerned or worried about?
Yeah, be skeptical. It's like one takeaway, right? Like, be skeptical about the data that you're putting in there. We know that LLMs absolutely adore text files, well-formatted text files, JSON outputs. They don't really like Excel tape, like big tables, stuff like that. Be thoughtful about it. Don't just put a SCORM course in there and expect it to know how to unzip the file and read all the HTML. That's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're kind of at time, but I think about these like quite often, like, hey, does course content need to be created in advance, or do we move the value up? Does our job become more of validating that knowledge and then having trust in the tools to generate the outputs on demand as needed? I don't think for all things. I think that kind of plays into that last bullet of where should we, the humans, be involved. I think about LMSs in a while. It's very rare I hear someone say, I love my LMS or I'm happy with it. And I think about, like, could an LMS be a series of agents that do these jobs in a headless way? And then my other one that my colleague Matt Donovan and I debate quite often is like, we talk a lot about AI doing amazing performance support in the flow of work, getting people access to information. But what learning should happen outside of the flow of work? What should be those deliberate developmental moments? What should be the things that we focus on that and think about that? Because I think those are the moments where the value we all bring to the table is understanding this, because it's not everything's going to be replaced by a dynamic chatbot in the world. That's not the way people learn everything. So again, just some things. I love the dialogue that's there. We've been having questions kind of throughout this whole thing. So I just want to end with a thank you and say, please keep in touch with us. Come back to us, ask questions, follow us on LinkedIn, do what we can do to help. And thank you for giving us your time today.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you, Jeff, and you, Brett, for your presentation. It was a great discussion, and it really is a big, hot topic. And I want to send a big thank you out to everyone who's joining us for your time and attention. We do ask at the end of the session that you take a brief minute to fill out our survey. We appreciate your feedback, and we do use it. We hope that you will join us again for another one of our upcoming webinars. So be sure to visit GP Strategy's website to view future sessions. And I wish everyone on the call a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you again.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.